Alrighty, so projection mapping. Basically, we'll start with the tools that you need to do projection mapping. Well, what is projection mapping to begin with? When we say projection mapping, what does that mean?
Mapping a projection.
Mapping a projection? Okay, let me break that down just a little bit.
To a particular object or space.
Yeah, a particular object or space. So you're actually manipulating the contour of your image to fit on a certain object or to fit on a certain element of architecture or something like that. A wall, a ceiling, a window, something you build, something that's already existing in the space. So when people say that they're projection mapping, that's what that means. And they call it mapping because, as you'll see in a minute, you're actually like taking the image and you're breaking it up into pieces in order to actually like manipulate the image to I guess kind of like literally and metaphorically like map it onto an object. So you have a question? No? Okay. Math is hard for me to hear, but anyway, you'll see projection mapping done in like really kind of crazy environments, like the Sydney Opera House has a projection mapping thing on it that happens every night. But a lot of times, it's a really big spectacle, right? So they'll make buildings look like they're falling down, and it's really cool. They can do really cool things like that. For me, I use projection mapping to embed my videos that I create into architecture to create a conceptual connection between the architecture, the space, and the content of my videos. So I use projection mapping because I really want to make the video feel like it's embedded in the environment. And although it's still a spectacle when I project on a really big building, I really am using the process as a way to create meaning rather than just a spectacle, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of how I want you all to think about it too. So it's not just kind of like, oh my God, that's super cool, because it is really cool and it can be fun, but also always keep in mind that when you are using this process, that you want to be doing it intentionally. You want to be thinking about, how it influences your concept that you're trying to convey with your work. So for this setup today, what I have two projectors, and the reason for that is because on one projector, I'm going to be projecting Malumin, which is the software that we're going to be using, the interface of that, so you can see what I'm doing in the projection mapping software. And then on the other display, on the other projector is where I'll actually use this one for the actual mapping. So that'll make more sense when I get it all going. But that's why I'm using two projectors. You don't need two projectors for this. You basically just need one projector and a computer, right? You also need a software that allows you to, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but basically you need a software that allows you to do projection mapping. We use Malumin for this program, and I've tried lots of different projection mapping programs or applications, and I found that I liked Malumin the best. Just the interface was more user-friendly, and there are other reasons why I like that one better than others. But there are several out there. You can also use After Effects to do this. I don't do that very often, but there are ways to project at 100% in After Effects, which is free to you from the university, right? And as you move forward, After Effects might be something that maybe you always are, you're always going to have the Creative Suite. And so maybe After Effects is something you will already have. So that it is possible to projection map in After Effects. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, with Malumin and other projection mapping software, they can be kind of pricey. I have the educational license for 5 computers, and I don't remember how much I paid for it, but I think it's like up around $800 or something for a license for Malumin. The cool thing about Malumin is you can rent it, so you can rent it for a month, and I think there's also a student discount, and I think it's like $50 or $60. And so if you have an exhibition coming up, you know you're gonna be using projection mapping for that show. The cool thing is you can rent Malumen for a month, use it to map your video, and then through Malumen you can export it as a self-contained video file, export it as like a QuickTime file or an MP4. And then if you keep your projector and everything in the right place, then you should just be able to take that video file and put it on a media player in the gallery. So then you don't need Malumen after that at all. Does that make sense? So that's one of the reasons why I like Malumen better than other applications. So, okay, I'm still gonna talk about gear. So projectors, computer, the projectors hooked to the computer through HDMI cables. Y'all probably already know that, I'm sure you do. These projectors for some reason only came with VGA cables. Adam and I were just laughing about that. So projectors, actually just like displays, I'm gonna show you a VGA cable. Displays in general, the way they connect to media players, to your computer, whatever, evolve over time, right? Technology evolves over time. And so things change, right? We have to get new dongles every 5 seconds for Mac, and they're super expensive. This is a VGA cable. This was kind of like the default cable for projectors, like maybe 10 years, not even 10 years ago, maybe? I don't know. I don't know why I'm looking at you. Do you know? Maybe you know. There's these cables. These most of them do not support high resolution. So the difference between cables is like the resolution they support and the type of, and whether or not they support audio. So usually these do not support audio and they're lower resolution. There's also DV cables that support a higher resolution that, I could give a whole lecture on cables. The important thing to remember is use HDMI. It supports audio and high definition. But if you're in a bind, I have about 10 million VGA cables if you want to make an art project with them. So, okay, and that's what they look like. So also, if you are in a Mac environment like we are, you're going to need a dongle or an adapter that allows you to plug a VGA cable into your laptop. So I have 2 hooked up right now, 1 for each display. And so, all right. Glasses. I always think projections are out of focus, and then I remember I don't have my glasses on. So an important thing to remember when you hook up your projector and your projection mapping is you need to not mirror displays on your computer. So we need to go check our system preferences. And look, I have a nicer picture of myself here. Maybe I'll use that. Let's see, displays. So it's this little display thing. And actually in the new operating system, I can't remember what the latest operating system is on OS or on Mac OS. Anybody remember? Some mountain.
Oh, they started, I think.
I can't remember. Anyway, I noticed for the first time, like ever since I've been using Macs, the interface of your system preferences changed, and they changed for projection stuff. So it's actually gonna be a little different when you get on these, because I haven't updated my computer yet. So when you get on these today, this will look a little bit different, but the idea is still the same. You want to look at arrangement, and right now I have mirror displays checked, which means that all of my displays are showing the same thing. And if I uncheck mirror displays, okay. So now this just like, actually, I'm gonna make that display my main display. So I can show you. Okay, so now I made this like my laptop. So I can't see anything on my laptop. I can only see stuff up here. So I unchecked mirror displays, and now it's showing me each display. And so the one with the white bar on it is your main display. Usually that's going to be your laptop. You want to make sure that your laptop, you know, is your main display, and then your projector is your external. So you can also see, those actually do look a little bit different in size. for some reason. So the resolution of that one must be a little different. I must have to do something with it. Let's move this over here. So another thing that this tells me is the resolution of my displays. And it doesn't tell me exactly the resolution, but the size of the rectangle, the smaller it is, the smaller the resolution, the larger it is, the larger the resolution. These new projectors that I got are 1920 by 1080. And so, which is higher resolution than those short throw projectors that we were using last semester. So the ones we used, or a couple of them that we used for, I think for the wallpaper, animated wallpaper was lower res than these. So nonetheless, it's just something to know that you can kind of see what your resolution is. And why is resolution important in projection mapping? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why resolution is important in the world. Why is resolution important in projection mapping?
I think a lot of it's like texture.
Texture?
Maybe like clarity of like the way things on your projection like look, like how they look on your laptop versus how they're gonna look like on a displayed surface.
Yes, that is something that's like probably one of the biggest frustrations with projecting anything really, is that it's never going to look as good on the projection as it does on your computer. It's never going to look as good printed. Nothing ever looks as beautiful as it does on your super high resolution backlit screen. So the higher the resolution of your projector, the more crisp your imagery is going to be, the higher the detail you're going to get. But the problem with that too is that the higher the resolution, the more expensive the projector, right? So I come from projection mapping, like, I started projection mapping like 12, 13 years ago when I was in grad school and I was broke and I couldn't afford like a super, you know what I mean? So I just like was using like classroom projectors that were as cheap as I could find and they were lower resolution. And at that point I didn't really care. I was just like, that's all I can afford. So, and it's the same thing with the brightness, right? So the brighter the image, the better you can see it, but also the brighter the lamp on your projector, the more expensive it is. So some of those really big projectors I use for those big buildings, those are like $100,000 projectors, like $80,000 to $100,000 projectors. They're freaking expensive. And so anyway, they're rented. I don't know this. They don't pay me enough for that. I wish they did. But anyway, so those are just some things that you have to think about when you're projecting, right? Like the lighting in your space, the way you get around not having to pay $100,000 for a really bright projector is you do it in a dark space. And a lot of times galleries have dark spaces. So I know this is a lot even before we get into kind of the software. Oh, I need to let Liv in.
It said that she can see.
Oh, it does? Okay.
It did a second ago when she logged on. I just want.
Hey, Liv, can you hear and see us?
Yes.
Yay. I'm such a good teacher. I'm kidding. I'm surprised at myself that I made that function properly. Okay, cool. Great. Good to have you, Liv. Okay, so here we are with that. And that being said, I am going to open up my Lumen 4. We just upgraded. So this is going to be a little bit different than what we were working with last semester.
What do projectors like these?
These projectors were like $550.
What would you think is like the biggest you could make? And still look these, you know what I mean? Like, would this do like a house front or is like this wall about as big as it's gonna be?
It depends on your lighting. Like if you're outdoors, then you have like street lights to contend with. It depends on how dark you can get your space. And another thing is these are not short throw projectors. So the projectors we were using last semester, do you all remember those? Like how big they would project? Like we filled from here, we would have filled like the whole wall, right? So you also have the option of getting short throw projectors that allow you to get like a bigger image in a more shallow space. But the thing with those is that they still have the same amount of brightness. So the bigger you project it, the less bright it's going to be, basically. So it's kind of like there's lots of scenarios, like lots of little things that you have to consider. But if you're going to do, yeah, like at the front of a house or something, you can get like a 10,000 lumen projector now for like 15,000 bucks.
That's what I mean, to do outside, like big stuff, you're gonna need something a lot bigger. than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. And
Even if you could make it dark.
right.
They're still just not powerful enough to go that big.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's still lots of cool things you can do with smaller ones out. Plus, also you can stitch them together, and you can do that in the Lumen too. So if you have several less bright projectors, you can stitch them all together into one image. So that's another route you could go too. So I already have this. Oh, 4.1. Remind me later. Okay, so I'm going to start a new project. How's this looking? Too bad. It's still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So by default, Lumen opens up into the dashboard setting. And I think I'm going to work with this a little bit today with you all, because usually we've been working with the timeline. And I usually work with the timeline because it's set up more like Premiere. And I'm just used to working in a narrative kind of format. But the dashboard allows you, is like a timeline, but it allows you to have lots of different videos that you can switch between really quickly, that are all mapped the same way. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. I don't have tons of experience with the dashboard. Like I said, I use a timeline a lot, so hopefully I don't screw it up while I'm doing this. But basically, I'm going to go back for a second and talk about the interface. So it looks probably like every other, or it looks similar to other video editing applications that we've used. We have our preview panel, which shows us our imagery, shows us what we're doing. We have the dashboard, like I said, like I talked about, I'll get to that in a minute. We have a timeline that has layers. So when we're thinking about, like layers in Premiere or After Effects, similar here, right? We can change the opacity, we can have some blend modes, things like that, to work with layers in interesting ways. In the timeline, there's also layers in the dashboard. So over here is one of the most important parts, and they make this the smallest little button that everyone always forgets about. And if we click this, it opens up our library. And this is where we pull in our media content. So if we have a video on our computer, that we can just drag and drop it right into there. And let's see. I don't even know what these are. I think I always use this one, which is like my, oh, dang.
So is this like an already edited video?
Yes. Yeah, you want to do, there are like editing. So I just dragged and dropped that in there, and now you can see the file in there, but I'm not going to use my own content for this because the new version has shaders, which I'm going to talk about in a sec. So it's just content, filler content that we're going to use while we're mapping. So I'm just going to, if my computer does get weird, there is a possibility I might have to stop recording on Zoom and trying to, there we go. Okay. But yeah, so like I was just saying, you want to try to have your video to like its most complete point possible before bringing it in here, because there are things that you can do in here, like I was just talking about. There's like blend modes and stuff like that, and there are some effects and stuff, but it's nothing compared to like what you can do in Premiere or After Effects. And also another thing that you want to think about is a lot of times you're using this type of technology in a gallery exhibition or like an event or something like that, in some sort of public display, right? And the more that you make Malumen do, the less it wants to work properly for you. So if you have like a 2000 gig video and you are playing it through Malumen and then you put all these effects on it, like Malumen will crash. And it also depends, it can crash, but it just depends, right? Like how fast your computer is, like there's a lot of variables, but you don't want your computer to crash when you have a live event. You know, a lot of people use this for theater. They use Malumen for theater and projection mapping in theater. You don't want your computer to crash and get like the blue screen of death in the middle of like a Broadway production, right? So you just want to make sure that you're not overloading Malumen as well. So these shaders are really cheesy in here. Like I said, they're just fillers. But I'm actually going to uncover this now and see if how you set the on that. Some projection mapping humor. I'm focusing this projector on this box, not on the wall. And I'm trying to make it so you can see both these screens at the same time. Okay, so I am going to, what's going on with this? I don't know. I'm gonna grab one of these shaders, and this is like your video. You do the same thing with a video, and you just drag and drop it. And now I have a video playing. This is going to be your masterpiece, obviously, that has some very deep conceptual connection to the object that you're projecting on. But for me, I'm just using this as filler. So now what I want to do is I have the content in Malumen. I want to send it out through this external display. And so I have to set up that display. And where is my output? There we go. Things are a little bit like located in different places in the new version. So up here you can see output. And if I click that, this is where I can set my resolution. And where I can choose my projector, where I can choose my external display. And so if I click this menu right here, let's see if I, oh, that's why I did that, because it was choosing my display as the external display. Anyway, I didn't know if you noticed that. Okay, so now it's projecting fully over here what I'm playing in my preview over here. And real quick, before I go back to that, I just want to talk about this a little bit more. You can actually, it looks like you can soften the edges here. Now that wasn't in the old version, but you can have more than one display. So, and actually I'm going to make this 1920 by 1080 because that is the resolution of my display. And I want to make sure I'm capitalizing on all of that resolution. So basically in this window, I'm telling it I have one display. You can hook up, like I've had 3 displays hooked up just to my laptop, like big, huge building, 3 different big projectors, all from my laptop, one video stretched across the whole thing. It was super cool. But you can hook up lots of projectors to one display or one computer. And so you can just tell it how you want to tell it how many you have. And if I raise it to 2, then I can actually choose if I wanted this one to be another mapped area or an area where I could map projection, then I could tell it to treat this projector as another display. And I could control this projector through Malumen. But since I'm just using it just for this tutorial, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to bring this down here. So that's one important thing to know. Tell it how many projectors you have. Most of the time it's just going to be 1. Make sure that your resolution of your layout, which is your canvas basically in Lumen, matches the resolution of your projector. So those are the two main things.
That one option. One.
No, you can have as many as you can fit in there. Yeah. And actually, I was going to add another one in here. After I do the box, we can put another one in there. So, okay. Okay, so I'm just zooming out a little bit, reorientating myself to figure out what I want to tell you next. There was something I just wanted to tell you, and I don't remember what it was. Whatever. Any questions so far? Any questions? I think maybe we're good like this. Maybe we don't have to turn off the lights. Or should we? Let's see this on. How does it look in here? All right, so now I have this video, and if I click on it, I can do things to it in the preview panel. So I can click and move it around, and you can see that it's moving around over here in my other thing. And another thing to think about or to know about projection mapping is basically you're not changing the shape of the actual projection, right? It's always going to be rectangle. But what you're doing is you're making wherever you don't want video black. So because you're projecting light, you can never make that truly black. So you're always going to have that like little bit of a gray surrounding that area. And that's why when we go into our output, that we can do this soft edge, because if do you all see what I'm doing or what I'm talking about on the left? It's not working actually. Where am I? That's weird. Oh, wait, smooth. I'm doing the wrong one or something. Huh. Oh, yeah. What's it? I don't know what the difference between smooth and soft edge is. Seems like. Anyway, it was working on one of them, but not on the other. Nonetheless, I'll show you physically. Cool. Did you see where I hit it for next time?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is that area that I'm talking about, right? This gray. And so it kind of ruins the illusion. So basically what people do to make this kind of disappear is soften that edge. And that's why it's cool that in the most recent version of Lumen, it'll do that in the Lumen for you. But you can also like do it physically by just putting something around the projector, because it'll be out of focus naturally if it's really close to the projector. I used to just put gaff tape on my lenses. Not right on the lens, but like there's always a little lip, and I would just put gaff tape over it just to like soften that edge a little bit, because then it makes it just kind of disappear. So there's that. Okay, so like if I move this all the way now, if you're looking at the box, hopefully you can kind of see the box right now. If you can't, maybe come move over here to where you can see it so you can see what I'm doing. So so it's a three-dimensional object, obviously. And if I just move this video onto the box, it doesn't really look like it's naturally three-dimensional with the box, right? So you have to push the perspective of your video to match the perspective of your object. And that's what they call mapping. But it's a lot like drawing, right? Like you're taking something that's two-dimensional and you're pushing the perspective to create the illusion of three-dimensionality. It's an illusion. You're not actually like bending light, right? Unless you're a magician or a unicorn. My daughter has this book about unicorns and she likes it a lot. So I'm reading it a lot right now. Actually, it's not just unicorns, it's groovicorns. So they're pretty cool. Okay, so I can make this larger, smaller, and I'm doing that while I am active in this tool up here, which is like, let me see if I can just roll over it. It tells me what it is. Okay. Basically, it's just like a two-dimensional scale tool, basically, and it keeps it in proportion. So I can make this small here, and I can push it around. Obviously, it's not fitting the way I want it to. So I want to make sure that my projection is at least as big as my object, right? Or whatever I'm projecting on, right? Because you want to fill it with content. And ideally not much bigger, because right now I have a lot of empty space that I'm projecting onto the wall behind my object, right? That's all resolution that I'm losing out of my projector. So if you can fill your object with as much of your projection as possible, then you're capitalizing on as much of a resolution as possible. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so there's that. I can also do this next tool, which is a corner pin. And what that allows me to do is push the perspective of the video. And so I can take these corners, and what I'm trying to do is just match them up with the corners of my video. Or my object, I mean. So that gets it pretty close, right? But it still isn't like mapped. Like it's not, the dimensionality isn't matching the dimensionality of the box. I still need to force that perspective a little bit more where that box turns, where there's those two planes that come together. And in order to do that, there's so many fun tools in here, and I don't want to like bore you guys for an hour and a half, but I'm skipping some stuff. I'm just going like straight to the point, but there's other cool things that you can do too. Like there's a slice editor. I could slice this video into like several videos and I don't know, I separate them. It's so cool. But so over here, once I have my media activated and it's highlighted in the timeline or the dashboard, then all these options open up for that media in this panel. And so you can see I have my blend mode is up here, the opacity, position, scale, all that good stuff, rotation, you know, and I can mess around with that in here if I wanted to. And then mapping is right underneath here. Real quick, down here is effects. So there's different effects, like last semester we were using cool glitch effects with some of our stuff. Maybe we should add one. Actually, I'm not going to make it do anything more than my computer is like, you can hear it, it's like overheating. It's like, stop making me do all this stuff. So, and then there's masks. I'm going to get to masks in a minute. I want to show you mapping first. Okay, so I'm back up to mapping, and I want to choose warping. And so what just happened when I clicked that warping up here on my imagery? Yeah, so it separated it, and it made all these different points that I can move. And I can actually add, I can make this into however many segments as I need it to be. So if this is a really detailed object, you can make this into a lot of different segments that you're basically drawing with, right? You're forcing that perspective with those segments. Since this is really basic, I don't have that many surfaces on here. Remember what I did when I was practicing this. I think I only needed really maybe that. Maybe not even that. Okay, So now I have this point right here that I can move and force the perspective. And so I can actually, what I'm doing is I'm taking this point and I'm putting it right where those two planes meet at that top corner. And then I'm gonna do the same thing down here. And I push it a little bit further so I can like go back and make sure that it's hitting just at the right point. Because you can see on the wall where it's going over, right? And any of that spillage is like breaking the illusion, you know? So if I want to go fix that, I can just, I'm looking at the shadow on the wall and I look at the box and I look at what I'm doing in the lumen, like not simultaneously because I don't have 12 eyes, but that would be really impressive. But basically that's what I'm looking at while I'm doing this to make sure that I'm not going over and I'm not going under. Because like what's happening is you're getting it down to like the pixels, right? And you know, you can go up there and you can actually see the grid of pixels and you're working at that level really. So so that looks like this one needs to come down a little bit. And if I wasn't lazy, I'd get up and like walk around and make sure that it's, I'm just so good at it, I can just tell. Okay. So you can see now that I have forced the perspective. It's a little bit actually, does it look better? I don't know. Well, another thing that I'm looking at with this one is that I can see like the grid, and actually I'm going to show you an actual grid that is new with this version that I think is helpful. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to add this grid. Press play. And now I have a grid. And so I can use that because what I was also looking at with the last one is the horizontal lines, right? And if they look like, you know, when you're drawing, like in back, you know, like foundational drawing, when you had to draw the hallway.
Yeah.
That was like one of my favorite parts. I loved drawing. I wanted to major in drawing actually, but there was no drawing major in my undergrad. But anyway, so, and here I am. Digitally drawing masterpieces on a box. Okay. So, but anyway, so this can be really useful to really get the perspective of it correct. And so now that I had one thing mapped on the layer, I can go back and my mapping still exists. So I could add another one. Oh,
Yeah, that's trippy.
That's true.
Nice.
Oh my god.
It's literally Apple's like, to hire you to make us an art piece.
yes.
Yeah.
Let me think.
Nobody
Yes.
backs with that.
Also, another cool thing, there's a countdown thing in here. So, because I do a lot of like live events, you know, and so it's always weird, right? Because I don't really make work that is like it is narrative, but very loosely narrative. But people, when they see projections in public space, they really want to sit there and they expect like a movie, right? They bring chairs, like, I mean, it's really funny. And so like this countdown thing would actually be kind of cool because then it's like, you know, people like there's anticipation being built. Let's see, what else? What other ones do you want to try? Wisps.
I wish all of them.
So if my computer wasn't imploding right now, we could add another layer down here, and I'll show you how to do that. You just press plus, and it adds another layer. I could let's just say, oh, the seascape. That's like totally something I like. Okay, I'm not sure why I can't see that there, but you should be able to, there's like a red thing on it.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, I guess you could copy the mapping. Anyway, it's a little complicated, but let's actually, here, we'll try this. So another thing that you want to think about is like the content of your video, right? And how it's going to translate onto the composition. Like you have to think about your object as a composition. And so like my object is vertical, right? So it's more vertical than it is horizontal. So if I was creating video for this and I was editing it in Premiere or After Effects or whatever, I would try to match that as close as possible. So I didn't create this like wide, horizontal composition or video that I'm going to try to squish into, you know what I mean? So you really want to think about like what I'll do sometimes is I'll actually like, if it's a building or something, I'll sketch out the building or I'll work from an image of the building and I'll lay out my imagery like, in accordance to how it would lay out on the actual like proportions of the building itself. Because we're no longer in like just 1920 by 1080 land, right? We're like in land where any shape is possible. All right, let's do an organic object. Anybody have anything that's like not rectangle, not geometric? Your body?
Oh, we can use
I think
spray
you're wearing
bottles.
too much black, I think.
Yeah.
I
we
think
can use
if
the
you were
spray
wearing
bottles.
what?
The spray bottles.
Spray bottle? Okay, why don't we do your shoe too? Let's try your shoe. Put my skills to the test. Because I want to show you like there's, the geometric stuff is easier, but you can also map. Can you just set it up so it's in the projection area? Either, both of them, either or.
So, and that's this on the.
On these,
And then you said like adding layers is gonna cause the computer down. How
my
many
computer's
layers-
not happy right now because I'm recording in Zoom and I'm zooming. So I think that's why but yes, I have tested these.
I didn't know if you knew like. how many layers you could expect.
You could do, you can do a
Without-
lot.
without the computer.
I mean, you just push the limits and see. I mean, obviously, it's kind of like, it's like anything, right? Like, how many can you do in Premiere without Premiere crashing?
Right, yeah, no,
You
I just didn't know
know?
if you were like, yeah, I would probably do this.
I
guess it's
think
just a
that,
problem.
yeah, I think that if you're going to be layering a lot, I would try to do it like if it's possible, if you don't have to do anything live during the event, to do it in your video in Premiere. You know what I mean? Because anything that you can render and compress beforehand is going to help it run smoother. So, but I tested these. These are nice. These have the new M1 chip, and it's supposed to be awesome. And I took off a bunch of stuff. Like, these are just running Malumen right now. I mean, there's Adobe software on here, but really, I'm hoping just to use these for Malumen, and so I'm hoping that they're gonna be really nice for us, and I think they will be.
Yeah, the processing power on those is like, because I have one myself, like, I can have like free Adobe applications open and my computer might still.
That's awesome.
Not a box like the size of the down. What resolution?
Hello. What
Yeah,
resolution?
like, I mean, if we put in a bunch of like 4K or 1080 videos. I just didn't know if like a lower resolution video is gonna. how that's-
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, a lower res video will take less to process. Yeah, so if you're working with 4K, then you have a bigger file, you have more pixels that it's working with at one time, but But that being said, like 4K imagery being projection mapped is pretty freaking nice. So you just push it until it tells you that you can't do it. That's kind of my theory anyway. Unless I'm doing something, you know, like it has to be like work. It has to work. Yeah.
Like, the size of
That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. So yes, I don't think it's for more than one side. I'm sure I have at some point. But yeah, you can totally do that. So if you had another projector, like this projector, I can hit 2 planes of that box. If you had a projector coming from the other side, you can hit the other 2 planes of that box. But something that's really important to remember that all projection artists have to deal with is, like I've said before, what are these? What am I doing? Shadow puppets. Everyone does shadow puppets. Just be happy with them. They'll never go away. No, but what I'm saying is, like, is a shadow of your viewer. So if you're in a gallery setting and you're doing a 3-dimensional object like a sculpture or something, and you have it on a pedestal, let's say, or it's suspended from the ceiling or something, and you want people to be able to walk around it, then when you get in between, when your viewer gets in between your projector and your object, they're going to be blocking the projection. So the most ideal way to mitigate that is to have the projector as high as possible and as close as possible to your object. So the reason for that is because, like, as high as possible makes your projection like steeper, and then as close as possible, it lessens the amount of room for a viewer, a person to, you know, be in that space. So that's why short throw projectors are nice, which we have a few of, because you can get short throw projectors like pretty close. And, you know, and that lessens the amount of shadow. Now, a lot of video artists, projection artists, you know, like they own the shadow. It's kind of like, you know, in clay owning fingerprints or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of the materiality of the process. And so it's, and the same thing with like all the cables, all the crap that goes along with all this stuff. A lot of artists don't even care. Like, I make it look all pretty, I hide it, you know, like I spend hours making it look pretty. A lot of video artists just leave all that out. They don't care. They're like, this is the process, right? So I'm gonna start being like that. Let's see if I can get this shoe. So, all right, let's see what we can do here. This is a 4-hour set of this video. Ooh, Jazz. That might be something for you to do in the Gear Lab. Jazz is our new Gear Lab monitor. Yay, Jazz. All right. Make this smaller.
For like stained glass.
Okay, this would take me a while to mount this. But I'm gonna do the contour. Okay, I'm gonna do the contour, and because I want to show you how to do organic stuff. So and then I'll do the bottle later, maybe not. Somebody else can do the bottle. All right, so I'm gonna choose warping again, and I have my line, or I have my points here, but it's still geometric. And so what I want to do is choose Bezier mode. And so what that does, I'm going to get rid of this layer. Get rid of this layer. There we go. What did that do? Oh, it was just a zoom.
You know, it first- Yeah, there's-
I think that's just the visibility.
Oh. Very far X on the very far right.
Got it. So I just had to press edit board and then let me do that.
All right, so not going here. All right, so I have Bezier mode selected, and now I can have curved lines. And so you can do curved lines, but on all the points, and you can get pretty detailed with how these things curve. Now we're using kind of abstracted imagery, but if we were using something, you know, that was more realistic, the end goal is to make it look normal, right? When it's on the surface of a three-dimensional object, if that makes sense. So we're forcing the perspective, like the curvilinear perspective, if that's a term, of our image to make this look not manipulated. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm actually gonna go back up here. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller so I'm not wasting more than I need to. Okay, and now go back here. And I don't know how many of these I actually need, but okay, I'm gonna be like, okay, so these little things in the corner down here, I can zoom in and out this way of the preview panel. I can also use my trackpad for zooming in and out and stuff and moving it around down here. I think, no, it doesn't let me do that. Ah! I thought if I held down my space bar, it would let me move it, but it didn't, so. You gotta click this thing to move it around, which is kind of stupid, but whatever. Okay, so. I don't know. I don't want to waste everyone's time here, but you all get the kind of gist. I mean, I would have to sit here for a while and make this pretty. But same thing, I'm looking at the contour on the wall to see what's happening there. And then I'm using the Beziers to try to, one Bezier. Yeah, so if I hold down Option, I can just make one Bezier handle move. Okay, so you can see that, oops. Doing organic shapes takes a little more finesse, I would say. Somebody want to try?
It'd be weird not being able to see you.
So, other questions? So while Jazz is doing that, I'll just talk about a couple other functionalities of Malumen. Up here, that little doohickey thing, that's a mask. So you're probably all familiar with masks in Premiere and After Effects or whatever. What does a mask do? Yeah, blocks stuff from, so it makes it either so you can see something or you can't see something, right? So masks can be any shape. And so you can create masks in the Lumen 2 to kind of map that way. So you could have, instead of manipulating the actual video itself, you could have the video just fill the whole thing, and then you could make a mask around it, but then you wouldn't be pushing the perspective of the video. Does that make sense? So I just want to let you know that there are you can mask, and I've used masks a lot in the Lumen. So you can use masks in the Lumen. This thing is new, that little paintbrush, so I'm not sure what that does. What else? Once you get this mapped, and let's say, like I was talking about earlier, like it's for an exhibition, you just rented an Lumen for a month, and you want to get it onto a media player in the gallery, you go to output, and then, Jazz, can you click on output real quick up here? And, no, you go to board. Okay, so you can only do that. Okay, actually, so you can only export a timeline. So what you'd have to do, which makes sense because self-contained video is time-based, right? So it's a limited amount of time. So you would have to, if you were working in the dashboard, then you just export the dashboard into a timeline, and then you can export the timeline as a video. So then you end up with, I think it's MP4 from here. You end up with an MP4, you play it on loop, you put it on your media player, you play it on loop, and then hopefully everything goes well in the exhibition and the power doesn't get shut off. Obviously, you need somebody to turn on and off the projector every day. Ideally, you'd have a media player that just stays on and will loop your video until the end of time, until you tell it not to. So you can save projects in here, just like you can save, you know, in other applications. There's a cool new feature in the shaders. Like if you're working in the timeline, then you can drag this like timer, and so it'll time your videos in between each one of these panels. So it'll play one for like 5 seconds, and it'll count down to 5. I mean, it would show the countdown, but it'd be like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then it would go to the next one. So if you had like different content that you wanted to have it looping through, you could do that.
I think I've got as much of the shoe as I can get.
Beautiful. Good job. I think that's all I wanted to talk, like, unless you all have other questions, we could just move right into, or we could take a break and then we can move into